Hello, and welcome back to the podcast where you are invited for lighthearted conversations about things that matter as you seek to live your most meaningful, beautiful, and joyful life. I'm your host, Dr. Edie Wadsworth, and I hope you enjoy your stay here at the House of Joy.
A cool realization to have when you're older is like, wow, my parents are doing this all for the first time. Like, you are, for the most part, like...
You're learning
too. And I can look back and see like, oh, of course, like they didn't know exactly what to do.
Right.
No one knows exactly what to do.
Be easy on yourselves. It's so common for the mom-daughter thing to go through a little bit of a rough patch.
Your kids know when you're not being for real or when there's an ulterior motive. Kids feel that anyway.
She never would butt in or tell you what she thought you ought to do. She would be like, how can I support you in what you're choosing? One of the things that has been so good for me, just in relationships, is that you just let go of your rope. You just like, oh, let me see it from their side. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to House of Joy.
Welcome back. We are back in the stew.
Back in the stew. Back in my office.
Back in just a corner of the house.
It's not so much a stew as it's just a room.
It's whatever you want it to be, girl. It is
back.
our stew.
Let's acknowledge we have Dolly back.
Dolly's been back.
No, I mean, she's been back a couple times, but we took her down for Christmas and the holiday, but she's been back a couple times. If you're not watching on YouTube,
watching over us every day,
Dolly is behind us.
She approves this message.
She approves of this message. Today we're talking about creating meaningful connection with your kids through the years. We're kind of going to focus, I think, more on how you are like transitioning to friendship with your adult kids. And we're really excited to chat about this one.
We have done a couple episodes about like relationships with your adult kids and last year when we first started the podcast.
But it continues to be the number one thing people ask us
every
about.
time we ask for recommendations or what you guys want to hear. Even if you've already listened to those episodes, like you want more. And I totally get why. It's definitely, I think a lot of people who are like follow your content are in the same similar situation. And I also think that a lot of people my age also struggle with their relationship with their parents. So it's never ceases to be a relevant topic. And I'm really excited.
Yeah.
To get into it today.
Yes. I really do think like raising your kids is one thing, but this transition and building really meaningful connection, building friendship with your kids is a whole nother thing.
And I feel like really through this podcast and we are not forced, but we do have to like sit down and have these conversations
and chat a lot
and I do feel like our relationship has I guess not totally changed, but I do feel like we are more on a friendship level, wouldn't you say?
For sure.
I feel like I talk to you more like a friend now.
It's interesting to me because I always felt this way even growing up. Like I had good friends like when I was growing up, but I had siblings and cousins. Like I had close family members to me. Mm-hmm. So I didn't ever feel the need to like have like super close friendships. And now I'm like, now my kids just fulfill that role. So I have some really amazing friendships, but I do find that as your kids transition, they really like you guys fulfill that role so much.
And I think what a lot of people like, at least what I see from the outside perspective of a lot of people I know or things I've seen online or just things that you start to like kind of see a pattern, it's like some parents struggle with, it's like, okay, I can't be my kid's friend when they're younger,
right?
And I'm really not their friend. Like,
yes,
I'm really
they
not
draw
their friend.
a firm line.
Which
is good.
Is good,
when they're
whatever.
that age, yeah.
And I think some parents also fall on the other side of that, where it's like you've kind of always,
they can't transition. They're kind of always.
They've always been that relationship.
I'm in this very defined like parent role.
Yeah. So I do think it's really an interesting topic, and I think everyone obviously has different personalities, different ways of parenting, but I do think like I've gotten to get so much more out of us together in this later part of life because you were willing to kind of transition that relationship too.
Yep.
And I think it's really cool that a relationship can change.
Yeah. Change, evolve
and
over time.
Become something a little bit different.
Yep.
And I think it's like gonna continue to be so good that we were able to get to this point. Yeah. Especially moving forward into like me getting married, me having kids, Yeah.
And I have a lot of our younger community say like, oh my gosh, it's so much fun for me to watch you with your older kids. And I think specifically the daughters, like it's so fun to watch because then
the potential
you see these memes online where it's like, I didn't know when I had daughters that I was raising my best friends, like that kind of thing. And my son Taylor too. And I know this is going to be true someday of Tom, you know, but it is so fun. So if you feel like this is something that you really want to lean into and you really do want to create this kind of deep, lasting relationship bond with your kids and transition it in a way, because a transition means like, oh, I'm going from it being one way, to it being another. And so it's definitely probably for most of us going to feel a little strange or a little bumpy or whatever, but it's definitely been surprisingly one of my favorite seasons of parenting. And Stevie and I say this all the time, but if given the chance to like go do something, we always want to be with our kids.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I know, that is really cool.
So fun.
And I do think like it goes hand in hand, like it's just as much also the child's, it has to be both.
Yeah.
Wanting to put in effort. But I think as a parent, you can kind of like, I think we've always followed your guys' lead in terms of like how we feel about.
Yeah. And I feel like it's been a little bit more natural with us, but I remember a very distinct conversation where I was like, oh, Stevie's willing to make this transition too.
Yes,
like be
definitely.
Very vulnerable, share things that you probably wouldn't share until your kids are older. Like he's been so open and vulnerable with you guys.
And it's really cool too, because I also had friends in high school that had the opposite, where like their parents were the friend. Like,
yeah, they were their friend in high school, like partying with them. That's not what we're talking about, everyone.
No, but I think it's interesting because, like, as being an adult now, I've had a lot of people come in my life where I get to just watch. You become more aware of everyone else.
And more aware of, like, oh, I had a different experience, or, oh, my experience was the same.
And me and my friends will sometimes talk about, like, it comes up, like, oh, what will I do differently than my parents? Or, like, what will I take from what they did? But it's really been cool because we've been able to have conversations about, like, especially with Tom, it's, like, a really interesting situation because he's growing up now and going through things that me and Ellie went through, obviously very in a different way because, life is different than back then, and also he's a boy, and it is different.
It's different, yeah.
But we're able to have conversations like, I kind of wish you would have told us this, or I kind of wish that you would have.
Yes, you have said that a few times, like, oh gosh, when we were that age, we didn't have a clue about this thing, and it would have been nice if you guys would have talked about it. And Tom, actually, to be a boy, is quite open, which is awesome, you know. And so, and my personality, I think it comes from having been raised in an environment where there were no there weren't many boundaries, or there wasn't a certain amount of decorum or whatever. Like, I tend to have, I'm more prudish.
Yeah, you definitely have tendency to,
tendency to not talk about things that are a little.
And like my generation, to be fair, like definitely falls more on like the oversharing type of energy. Like I don't think it's always, I think there's a good thing about both.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I think not everything has to be a conversation and not everything has to be shared. And sometimes I do catch myself being like, oh, that was kind of like interesting that I felt comfortable to say that in front of a stranger, and it's really crazy. So I definitely think that it can go too far both ways, but it's just such a great season of life to be able to know that I can say things like that to you, where it's like, I don't know if I don't know how that affected me as a kid, and we can have that conversation and you don't feel offended that like,
oh gosh,
you know what I'm saying?
No,
like,
and Dad and I, for the most part, are like, oh man, we look back a lot of times and go, if I had known, because you're so anxious at the time that, am I doing everything right? Am I, or whatever. And now, after having raised a bunch of kids, I'm way more laid back, like maybe even too much so, but more laid back. Like, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
Stop stressing about it. Just connect with them and love them.
And the cool thing is too, like what I've learned as I have gotten older, I think you see your parents so differently when you're younger, of course, because you just assume that they're coming from a place of like, it feels like they're you and they know
and it feels
more.
Like they're trying to keep you from doing your thing.
A cool realization to have when you're older is like, wow, my parents are doing this all for the first time. Like you are, for the most part, like
you're learning
too. And I can look back and see like, oh, of course, like they didn't know exactly what to do.
Right.
No one knows exactly what to do. I don't know what exactly to do right now. So if I had a kid right now, and you start to have that awareness like, oh, my parents are just normal humans.
They're just people.
And they get stuff wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
So it has been such an amazing thing to become an adult and become more aware. But I definitely think that it's a conversation worth having, especially if you struggle with your relationship with your kids. Like, I definitely think there's things that you can do to strengthen your bond and strengthen your relationship on both sides.
Yes. And so we kind of want to dive into that and kind of like a little bit of like what the transitions look like. Before we do that, I have some funny story that I have to tell you.
Yes.
You guys, by the way, you guys, can I just tell you this, that being a podcaster and having a microphone,
it's
right here.
It feels very powerful.
It feels like,
you have to start
just
singing.
fulfill my childhood dreams to be a singer?
Yes.
And do I have to be talking about relationship?
Like, can I just
transitions,
sing you a song?
Or could we just turn this into Miss Edie gets to live out her dreams to karaoke?
It is like, have you ever heard the thing about imposter syndrome? Like, where you like are living a life, but it feels like, oh, this can't be real. Like,
yes.
Sometimes I do feel that way just about podcasting in general, just because like, what
are we doing?
But definitely sometimes like I want to be a singer.
Every time, you guys, I wish you could see, every single time, literally without fail, when we sit down to these microphones at first to do the testing, we sing.
Or it's just singing. It's just natural.
And I was bringing up the fact that I heard this song the other day, Two Black Cadillacs, which Emmy and Ellie
Okay, let me just say, this
Carrie
song
Underwood.
had a chokehold on me and Ellie, like, for a very long time. In fact, like, Carrie Underwood, period, that whole album, like, chokehold on us. And I think Two Black Cadillacs, if you've never heard it, it's just, like, a very intense
dark
story. The storyline is insane, and it's like when you really start to listen to the lyrics, you're like, wait, huh? So I have questions about what that's about, but you really did, loved
by the
that
way,
song.
when I brought this up, you just started singing it, and I just wonder if you could please, for our dear podcast listeners, give us a little ditty. Give us a little Two Black Cadillacs ditty.
Now that I feel like I'm on the spot. And the preacher said he was a good man, and his brother said he was a good friend. Like, literally, she said one word, and it all came back to me.
It all
but the
came
women in the
rushing
two
back.
black veils didn't bother to cry.
Bye, bye,
Ma. Yeah, so what
There
you
you
guys
go,
missed
everyone.
is
We sung-
our beginning concert.
We sung the first half of the song.
Yeah, no, it was really good. And then we were looking up the lyrics, and then we were like, this
And
is really dark.
We
Like,
didn't mean for this to be like an object lesson, but literally one of the things that we're going to talk about later is like, you know, just doing fun stuff with your kids, like with your adult kids. Like,
well, and it reminded us,
and I was
too,
like, oh, that was really fun. We
It
just
reminded me,
sang
too, about our
together.
last episode, like
Yeah.
where we were talking about being light and being bright.
Yes.
And
yes.
I feel like that's so something I cherish about our relationship is, for the most part, it's just fun and bright.
will
and
dive
it's
into
not
some
so
fun.
serious all the time. Like,
Yes.
I feel like you have really, and I'm proud of you for this because you're a little bit older, but I feel like when me and Ellie come at you with these like really generational jokes or like anything that's probably going right above your head, you choose to dive right in with us.
I try to dive in.
And I think it's so fun. And there's obvious times where you're not understanding the context
I'm like,
at
what
all.
are you talking about?
But it makes it more fun. It makes it more light. You'll be like, and now we answer each other's calls. Sydney thinks this is so funny because seriously, me and Mom talk literally butt crack it on. She's like, it's literally right when you wake up and you're on the phone with your mom. And you'll be like, hey, girl. And Mom's like, hey, girl. Emily. Every single morning.
Emily
And
May.
Emily May. And yeah, there's such a lightness and a brightness about our relationship. But I'm glad because we did work for that. Like, we had to have some.
We all, listen, I think me and all of the girls had a little bit of a rough patch.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's so common, you guys. Be easy on yourselves. It's so common for the mom-daughter thing to go through a little bit of a rough patch. And the only really, like, I would say rough patch with Taylor was that I became not his primary person that he called several times. Like, he used to call me like you do.
Yeah.
Maybe not as many times a day, but a lot.
Yeah.
And when he met the love of his life, I think he started calling her a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is really hard.
This is really hard. What about me?
What? Now who am I
You're
going to
like-
talk to?
Just in the corner. Yeah. It turns
that was
out
hard. That was really the only rough patch. It was my rough patch.
had nothing to do with what he did or anything.
He
just
was doing the
having
right
normal course of his life go on.
He was doing leave and cleave, and I was doing this is not right.
I'm left alone in the corner. That's what you were doing.
So anyways, but so that's totally normal. But now I will say that you guys are, you, Katie, Ellie, Savannah, all of you girls, Mary Kate, she feels like my daughter. I
Y'all
love
are
her so
low-key
much.
best friends.
We're low-key BFFs. I love her so much. My daughter-in-law, by the way, she's incredible.
Yeah.
And also just funny, so sweet. Like, I look at all of these amazing women that I have in my life and go, how did I get so lucky to have all of these BFFs that are
and
so
I will
amazing?
like give you credit, and it is because of your attitude. Like, you totally come to the relationships with each one of us because we're all different too. We all need different things. Like,
Yeah.
that's a hard balance to make too.
Yep.
But you come to every person like exactly how they are.
Yep.
And just like totally accept each one of us for how we are. And you can feel that, like, if you didn't actually mean that and just kind
You
of were
could feel
faking
that.
it, we
Yep.
could definitely feel that. And you, especially in adulthood, like, you really do. I know that I could do anything and you would still be the same way towards me. Like, I could move anywhere. I could pick a different job. I could literally tell you I'm done doing this job. You would be like totally like gung-ho about it. And that's something you can't make up. That's something your kids know when you're not being for real, or when there's an ulterior motive, or when there's like a feeling that you're not saying.
Yes.
Your kids feel that anyway.
Yes.
And you never have that. So I think it allows us all to feel like, oh, we can call you anytime. Like, even Mary Kate, like, I think you really do allow for that with how you treat people. And so I think it's also on the other person. Of course, your kids also have to be willing to be honest and vulnerable. But I think that does come from when you feel like a safe place to go.
Yes.
No matter what, then of course we feel more open.
And, you know, it's interesting. Thank you for saying that. That means a lot. That I think I got that example so much from my mom, who we call Granny. She was definitely like that, still like that. You could tell her anything. She was going to be your biggest cheerleader, but she wasn't going to ever meddle, and she wasn't going to. Here's the other thing about Granny. Granny has very strong opinions, turns out. I've learned in later life. She never would butt in or tell you what she thought you ought to do. She would be like, how can I support you in what you're choosing?
Yep.
And I am telling you that I think that transition for most parents is really hard. When you go from having a lot of control over what your kids do and where they go and whatever.
Well, and also
or
being
feeling
like
you
their
have
sole
control.
protection feels like I'm their sole person.
Yeah. 2, I don't have control here. And I shouldn't have. It's their life. They want their own independence. They want to make their own decisions. And transitioning to this role of just being their best cheerleader.
Yeah.
You know, like their like hype squad. Their biggest support. And yeah, I mean, you guys just make that so easy, honestly, because you're all so amazing. But you are on all different paths.
Yeah,
you know,
we
it's
literally,
not like,
and we all have different personalities too. So it's not like,
yeah,
and we all have different relationships with you also. And definitely, I've just always, even with Ellie, like she's far away in New York and doing like a completely different thing than any of your kids really have done.
Yeah. Yep.
And y'all literally just jumped in there right with her too. Like when we go to New York, you're all about it. It's like you can tell you genuinely feel so excited and proud of her. Maybe you do have fear deep down just because you're, you know, I don't know, you could speak to this.
I mean,
I don't think you ever get rid of like,
we were like, oh gosh, she's going to do this. Like she's going to like move to a big city and, you know, yeah. So I think at first, but I just think that one of the things that you can really do to help is if you just, because a lot of times I think what happens is you get in this tug of war where you want your kids, you think you kind of know like what would be best for them, and you're pulling toward that in subtle or not so subtle ways, telling them what you think they should do and, you know, all of that. And they're pulling in the way that they're pulling. And one of the things that has been so good for me, just in relationships in general, but where this is this tension is that you just let go of your rope. You just like, oh, let me see it from their side and like get all the way over on their side. Like, how can I love you? How can I support you? I want to stay connected to you. And I think you can do this even when you don't even really agree with what they're doing. I think you can love them, stay connected to them, support them for who they are, even sometimes when maybe what they're doing is something that you don't.
I think that's what a lot, and I've seen this in a couple of the like requests for episodes too. And I think probably a lot of parents would agree, especially in your similar stage of life where I can already see me being an adult and getting to that place. Like, you have gone through so many things that have made you have this wisdom towards life, like this knowledge of certain things. And I think a lot of parents struggle when their kids choose, whether that be like religion or
a different path,
just a different path altogether, or you know, just dabble in things that maybe the parents don't understand. And I think that's where a lot of parents get caught up, because it's like, it feels like it, you know, you have this knowledge and it's maybe your responsibility to like try to teach your kids that, you know, and you also probably a little selfishly want your kids to go in the way that you
want them to
go.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big struggle too. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because,
well, I think here's how I think about it. This person has the Spirit of God in them. You know, they have their own God-given wisdom. They have, like, I love the idea of seeing them at their highest and best, like, and trusting that. Mm-hmm. Of course, everybody is going to go through a period of time where they're questioning everything, where they're probably rebelling against the very way that you raise them or the faith that you raise them in, or, you know, whatever. But this deep abiding faith that you just trust in them.
And I think like what you said about kind of letting go of the rope, like, you really can't control whether your kids are ever going to come back to what you think is right.
Yeah.
Or, you know,
or follow in a way
and even if you believe like the Spirit of God is within them, or,
yeah,
you know, whatever you believe about them, I think you also have to wrestle with and be okay with, maybe not be okay with is the right word, but if
continue
you want a relationship
to be connected to them, no matter what. If
you want a relationship with your kids,
yeah,
the end of the day, you can't control.
You can't control. And I just think that you can just continue to see them as creatures, amazing humans, sacred beings made by God, loved by Him, you know, created in His image with this inner wisdom. I don't know. I just think seeing them as their highest selves and trusting that.
Yeah.
And trusting in that.
Yeah.
You know?
And that is the beautiful thing about it, kind of what I said earlier too. Like, when you treat your kids and obviously have so much respect for them, because ultimately that is what you're describing, is having respect for your children.
Yeah.
And their decisions and their way
their
of
autonomy,
getting to a place. Yes.
Yeah.
You have respect. And when I know that you respect my decisions, mm-hmm. I feel close to you.
Yeah. And then I think that opens up often, you know, this opportunity where they will ask for your input.
Yep.
Or, you know, your opinion. I think a lot of times as parents, we're inserting our own opinion, our own will, our own whatever before it's asked for. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think, yeah, just that respect for the decisions that they're making, even if we feel like it's wrong, and just trusting that, no, you know, again, these are amazing, sacred humans made by God in His image. And I respect that and trust that. I love them. I want to stay connected to them. I want to support them. Because the other thing that I think of too is a lot of times and I notice this a lot in the last few years, is that it's so easy to look at the decisions they make or the behaviors they have instead of like, what is under that? Mm-hmm. What's the pain under that? Can I have compassion for that?
Yeah.
You know, what's the thing that I don't even see that might be driving that? And can I create a safe enough space without judgment, without comparison, without whatever? Can I create a safe enough space where they could share what's under that?
Yeah.
Their fear, their doubt, their, you know, whatever. And that is really what my mom always did for me. There was such a safety and a trust in her.
Yep.
That she was just going to be for me.
Yep.
No matter what.
Yeah. I remember last year, you know, a lot of times as like a young adult going into a new life of adulthood, there's just so many things you have to choose. There's so many paths and there's so many things that you're facing all of a sudden. And I have always found it so interesting, like, you've never put something like almost to almost to where sometimes I would be like, please just tell me what to do. Like, even like I remember on the car ride home from, I think we were in Pittsburgh, like,
okay,
you know, you face these parts of life where it's like, this is now serious and hard, and I don't know what to do. And even then, like, you really wouldn't necessarily give me advice or like tell me yes, this, no, that. And
yeah, it's almost like helping you come to your own wisdom.
Yes, and you always, like, I felt like you probably did have
an opinion.
And the cool thing about it is, like, the fact that you didn't tell me, I got to really come to what I really did feel.
Yes.
And what I really did think was truth. And most of the time, those
it's
aligned
the same.
together.
Yeah. Yeah, most of the time. Yeah.
Most of the time, sometimes
and
not.
sometimes they don't.
But it's really cool, especially if they are the same, for me to have come to that on my own.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so thankful to be at this stage of life and really feel confident also in my own decision making.
Yes.
I don't have to, like, rely on what I think you would want me to do or what I think you and Dad would want me to do.
Yes.
I'm very confident in my own ability now to, like, be my own advocate and be my own person that I can really trust myself.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's not always been like that. And I really think in the last year that has really grown in me.
Yeah.
But I feel like they do kind of align. They end up kind of aligning.
Yeah.
But really from my own.
It's interesting because that period where you were really struggling, I look back at that now and go, I know at the time it felt like big or, you know, or whatever. And now it's like, oh my gosh, that was so easy.
And
to,
I reference that a lot. And so it probably seems like, this big, huge thing. And it really wasn't. It just was really one of those moments in life. Like, you literally talk about it in your business, the quantum leap, like where you feel like you have a moment where everything shifts and like everything in your brain really.
It feels like, it's so easy now.
Yes.
I see it so clearly.
Yes. And so much less it was like this big dramatic thing as it was like a shift inwardly a shift in me. And so I really do reference that a lot because it did feel so big
like that. Yeah.
Looking back, it wasn't anything that, like, if you knew, you would be like, what? Like, you know, but anyway, I've always, like, since then, it's also opens me up, like, when I see you treat me like this, and I've told you this before, like, the way that I view my friends and the way that I view other people's struggles. And it's so human nature to, even with your friends, want to insert your opinion.
Just say, here, this is what you should do.
You should do this.
Yeah.
And it's taught me a lot about, like, even how you treat the people around you. Like, even Haddon, when we get married.
Yeah.
Like, even the way you treat Dad, it's the same way. It's like, you don't push your own really opinion on someone.
Yeah.
Because if they want to come to that, they will. And if not, you'll have a conversation about it and you'll get to somewhere. But that kind of attitude has such an impact on people.
Yep.
And you are passing that down. Like, the way that you treat your kids inherently, like, it does affect them. And they
and I think you can do that in ways where, like, just asking good questions and being really curious, you know, instead of feeling like as soon as your kids start talking about something, it's like because we love them so much, it comes from this good place, but then we start to go, oh, let me make sure I tell her this, or let me make sure. And instead of, like, relaxing back and just saying, oh, interesting. Well, what do you think about that? What do you know?
When I think about it too, like, our kind of selfish human nature, like, wants to help people and wants to be right about a situation. Like, I find this a lot when my friends are talking to me. Like, sometimes I just want to give them advice to
like, because you
think
of something. Yeah.
I'm like, this is really smart.
Good. Yeah. Right.
Which is really vulnerable. Like, I think a lot of people, if you think about the root of why you'd say something, sometimes it is that, like, you just want to make yourself feel
good,
helpful.
Yeah.
And I think probably for parents too, it's like, you want to be the one.
I know something about this. Let me share it all with you.
Yeah. I want to give you this wisdom. I want to give you this big piece of like,
yeah,
you know, and it's almost kind of more from a selfish place than actually getting your kids to where they need to be.
Yeah. And the thing of it is, I see it like this. You can try to force your opinions, your life, your whatever on them and try to get them there. And this could be when they're young or old. And you try to get them to a certain place fast. But always, to me, the answer is like love, understanding, curiosity. It's the slow way there, right? Usually.
Yep.
But it's the most powerful way that person can then feel like an internal transformation. Or, you know, for instance, you can try to make your child behave in a certain way, or you can give them an environment of unconditional love and respect, and they can get there probably slower than they would get there if you made them do something, but then you don't have their heart.
Yep.
You have the outward behavior. And I think it continues with a lot of people in adulthood. I mean, I've heard people say this, well, I could never tell my mom I'm doing that, or I could never tell my parents I'm doing that. So it's like they're doing the outward thing that they think their parents would approve of, but their heart isn't in it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can get, quote unquote, the right behavior, but at what cost to the real connection and relationship?
Yeah, well, then it's never real. It's this facade.
Which brings me to another thing, which I think is interesting. And this has been so good as we've had, you know, kids that have gotten married and now we have grandbabies, is like really respecting any boundaries, you know, that your older kids set. And I think about this because this comes up a lot in my coaching program, where people will go, oh my gosh, I'm not going to get to see them for Christmas, or they're only coming to our house for, you know, this amount of time. And like this kind of thing comes up a lot. And I don't know. I just feel I can remember what it was like to be on the other end of that and to go, oh my gosh, now we're going to have to drag these kids to 7 different places in one day. And I just think that, you know, I just have really let that all go. Like, we will love to see you and we will do everything. I literally will do anything just about to make this place fun for them, easy for them to be, like, you know, places to sleep and places to be. And maybe I should, you know, set this room up this way. Like, I want my kids home, especially in the holidays. Like, I get that. But also just be willing to go, hey, if it doesn't work out, we'll come visit you the day after. Or, you know, we'll do whatever. Just that flexibility, I think, and taking that pressure off of our adult kids to, for instance, like, you know, to have to be home for Christmas, like with Ellie, you know. Yeah. I'm like, look, any bit that you can come is amazing. And we will be so happy. Every time she leaves, I'm thinking, oh, I wish she could stay like 2 more days or 3 more days.
Yeah, and the sad thing about it, too, it's like if you kind of had this low-key pressure or kind of
mom's going to be upset.
She's already upset if she can't come. You know?
Right.
So
they don't need the added pressure.
They don't need the added, like, your feelings as well. Like, she knows you want her to be home. You know she wants to be home.
Right.
It doesn't really help anyone to add more pressure. Yeah. And it doesn't mean you can't be sad. It doesn't mean you can't miss your people.
Yeah.
But.
And, like, for instance, our Savannah girl is pregnant and having a baby. And Tom's spring break is, like, 2 or 3 weeks after the baby is supposed to come. And so when we were trying to figure it out with them, we're like, look, we want to be there however much and whenever we can. And you just tell us. And when we saw that it was going to kind of work out for spring break, we were like, you know, this would be a time when we could all come and stay the whole week, and we can get a house that's close to where y'all live and all of that. But just being willing to, like, not so laid back about it that it doesn't communicate how much you want to be there, right?
Yes.
But also not so attached to how you're involved.
Yes.
That you're upset if, you know, it doesn't work out the way you want to. And I think that can be tough to navigate, but I do just think, you know what else I think really helps with this is when the parents have a life that they love.
Yeah, we talked about this last time.
Separate from their kids.
I think at the basis, like, that probably is the most important part, because I think, first of all, y'all don't really have all of the time in the world to worry about each one of us. And like exactly what we're doing all the time. You know, there's a lot of us, first of all. But also, even if there are one or two of us, like, you have your own life and you have your own goals.
What is up with Dad texting us today going,
exactly,
I'm going snow skiing after clinic today.
We were just both got up and went skiing after work, and it's like, he might miss me, but he does not need me today.
He does not.
He does not need a thing from me. And it's better that way.
I know, he sent us a picture of him on the slopes. So I'm like, you are too cute.
He is.
Speaking of Dad, we went on a weekend trip this past weekend. Tom got invited to a they call it wildlife, but it's basically Young Life for middle school. He got invited to this Young Life retreat thing at Windy Gap. And Dad was like, literally, hey, should we go skiing? Should we go up to Beach Mountain and ski this weekend while Tom's gone? And I'm like, heck yeah. So we go. We had a ball, by the way. So much fun.
I know, people will be like, what are your parents doing? I'm like, they're on their own adventure, girl. I have no idea what they're doing this weekend. I feel like we've actually took a turn. Like, you guys are the teenagers and I'm the one, like, yeah, I don't know.
I'm in bed on a Saturday night and they are.
My parents are up later than me on a Saturday night. So I don't know what they're doing.
But it was hilarious because we stayed in this Airbnb. It was not the best experience we've
kind
ever
of like
had.
You guys were on a college trip.
It was like we were on a college trip. As soon as we walked in, I'm like, oh, this place doesn't smell good. And then Dad noticed that they had these two dueling sofas that had recliners on each end of them.
Mm-hmm. His dream
come true. And then he kept trying to show me how not only does the foot thing recline up, but he kept making me watch how the headrest also reclines up, so you can just get in exactly the right position to watch your UT Vols play basketball on a Saturday night. And I was laughing so hard. I said, Stevie, we are not getting a recliner sofa.
Nope.
Like, do not try it. He goes, well, the reason that you won't sit in it and make it do all its magic is because you know how much you'll love it. And I'm like,
well, I don't want to.
I'm not sitting in it. I'm not reclining in it. I did sit in it, but I didn't recline in it. We laughed so hard. I took a picture of him in the sofa and I said, I have to text the kids and tell them that you're trying to convince me to get a recliner sofa. Listen, if you have a recliner sofa and you love it, I love that for you. I am pretty committed to style.
Recliner sofas are not, they do not lend themselves in our living room.
No.
They do not lend themselves to be styled around. They do not lend themselves as the focal point.
I told Dad when we first got married, I'm like, one thing about me is I'm not going to have a recliner in the house.
So you're going to have to figure that out. Now, he does get his special chairs.
He does.
But they are customized to fit the aesthetic of the living room. And also comfort.
But it was funny. All of that to say, I think if as the parents, we can continue to figure out, what do I want to create in my life? What fun adventure do I want to go on? You know, like, how can we keep prioritizing our own relationship and be there for our kids and have fun with our kids? But I think that really helps, that when your kids are to an age where you feel like, because I've heard people say this too, I just feel left out of their life. And I have compassion for that. Like, I get that. We've definitely had periods of time where I felt left out of your all's lives. Like, oh, she's taking a turn and she's
like on a trip I didn't even know about.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I get that. But also, if you want that to be better, showing up needy and graspy and like, oh my gosh, why are you not calling me? Or, that just doesn't help. So just continuing to love them, support them, but without needing them to do a certain thing or be a certain way or spend a certain amount of time with you.
And I think, like, this is all great, but your kids will be able to tell if you're faking it. Yeah. Also, like, I'm not needy. No, I don't need anything from them, but you, low-key, you do.
Yep.
And it's not easy, but I do think you have to work on yourself and that at the end of the day. I think we talked about that more in our episodes last year.
We'll link to those past ones. Yeah, because this is definitely our most requested topic. And so this one is, you know, a little more laid back, more storytelling, but there's probably some more tips, I would say. Maybe.
I think we went more into like the piece that you have to do on yourself for your kids to feel that you don't need them.
Yes.
You know?
I will say too that the other thing that I think is really important is really celebrating your kids, like their wins and what they're doing in their life, and really enjoying what they're doing, and, you know, asking questions about it and all of that. Like, I know when Taylor and Mary Kate first came back, I would go to their house usually to keep the babies. So I would be like all enthralled with the babies. And I remember I came back and I saw somebody in town, and she said, "Oh my gosh, I saw Taylor. I was a patient of his. I saw him, you know, he was my doctor." And she was telling me all about it. And like, he's so professional. His bedside manner. She was just saying all of these amazing things about him. And it made me feel like, oh my gosh, like I've been so focused on the babies that I haven't even like ask, like, oh my gosh, like, how is, you know, your work going? And I'm so proud of you for that. Yeah. And so just remembering to, you know, really celebrate all that they're doing, all the wins. We've done that a lot. I think, you know, when you're here, a lot of times we'll call Ellie together and see how her auditions are going. And she, you know, if she's getting these callbacks or whatever. And, you know, just that kind of thing where you're just really celebrating them. I remember when I was younger and in medical school and had young kids, like if I would show up to a family gathering, and I was probably in my early 20s, maybe mid 20s, maybe late 20s even, it felt like everything was all about the older people that had the real jobs that were established.
Yeah.
I don't know if it feels like that to you.
Yeah, I think so.
But that made me, and people would sometimes ask like, "Oh, what are you doing?" You know, or whatever. But it just made me go, you know what? When I'm around people that age, I want to really be interested in them.
Yeah, and I think, I do sometimes feel that way. And it does make an impact, like, when someone who is that age doesn't make you feel that way.
Yes.
And, like, really
is
makes
so interested
you feel
in
like your life is really, like, you're really living. Like, I felt like, especially in college, people look at you kind of like,
oh, you're not quite there yet, or something.
You're not really an adult, and so I'm not going to treat you like one.
Yeah.
And I definitely think it's a hard transition. Like, that's exactly what we're talking about, especially with your kids. Like, it is hard probably to start viewing them as, like, they're an adult.
They're an adult now.
But, like,
with an adult job.
If they're in college and I think it's harder if maybe your kid's living in your basement or maybe not acting like an adult. Maybe that's harder.
Yeah.
But there is a point where, like, I'm an adult and I want to be treated like that. And I want to be treated like my decisions are respected, and that you view my life as like my own. And that you see that my struggles, and you validate my wins. Yes. Yeah. And I think that is,
I just remember at that age feeling just a little bit invisible to like the real,
you're not quite
older adults.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And, yeah. And I want to be different than that.
Yeah.
Like, I want to.
And I think you are. And I think if as a 24-year-old, I can understand that you are doing life for the first time, I think it's fair for you to understand that I am an adult. You know, like, it goes both ways.
It goes both ways, yes.
And if I can respect that, like, not all your decisions were the best, maybe.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Then it's also, like, I think it can be reciprocated, too.
Yes, that's such a good point. Yeah, I love that. But I do feel like that once you can work through these things, it literally can be, I mean, for me, it has been my favorite season.
And it's never too late. I think, like, if you listen to this and you feel like, oh, I do crave that with my kids, and I feel like maybe no one's fault, but if you feel like maybe you have done something, or you feel like you wish you would have done more as the kid or the parent.
Yeah.
I don't think it's ever too late to start really trying.
Let me ask you this, Em. I'm curious about this from your perspective. What do you think the line is between, like, can you imagine a scenario where somebody was trying to, like, where a parent was trying too hard to be your friend? Like, is there such a thing as that? Do you?
I mean, I definitely think, like, you at some point should maybe follow your kid's lead in a little bit of a way. Like, I definitely think,
because that I think could come across as, I don't have my own life, so you be my friend, or you,
and that's where it kind of comes
need.
to what I was saying at the beginning, where, like, your kids will be able to, especially your adult kids, will be able to tell the intention behind your questions, the intention behind you reaching out, like, whether that's, you know, because you're lacking in some area,
right?
And I think also, like, if your kids are adults, like, they need you to be okay first.
Yes.
So I definitely think, like, if you feel like you are in a good place with yourself as a parent, and you're reaching out to your kids in a way, like, I don't think there's a wrong way to go about it.
No.
But I also think, like, the cool thing that happens is, like, you can have open conversations. Like, I truly feel like if you were overstepping a boundary for me, I could say, like, okay, maybe we talk too much, or I don't think that, but I feel comfortable to be like, hey, are you okay? Like, you seem a little, you know. And the cool thing I've noticed too is our relationship has such good respect, and, like, we've gotten to this point that's taken a lot of work. I think, like, we have a lot of conversations all the time. But, like, I feel like sometimes you feel comfortable asking me questions.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
Like, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And
I do that a lot more than I used to.
Yeah.
In the past year, especially, you know, with us working together too. Yeah, I really respect your, like, you bring
and
some
that makes me
different
feel
set
too,
of skills to
like,
the table.
Oh, like, the fact that you can put down, maybe not your pride, but also realize, like, even though you're the adult with more experience, that maybe you don't see a perspective that maybe I see, like, that has totally changed the way I view how I want to be as an adult and a parent. Like, obviously I don't think you get there until your kids are, like, you know, adults, but I think it opens this door to, like, a new level of relationship.
It's like a deeper connection, a deeper mutual love and respect. That's what it feels like.
It does.
A deeper mutual love and respect.
And so I
mean, I remember a couple months ago I went to dinner with your older sister, my lovely daughter Katie, and Jeff, and we had so much fun, such deep conversation. Like, I love them so much and have so much, like, admiration for them.
Yeah.
I was talking to both of them about separate things, but, like, just with Katie's job and how committed she is to it, how much she loves her patients. And, you know, we just had some really good, deep conversations there. And then I was asking Jeff, like, all these questions. He's into real estate and investing. And so, like, it felt like, even though, again, I'm the quote unquote parent here, it felt like I spent most of the time kind of asking them, like, questions and learning new things. And it was, like, such a great conversation. And I think sometimes it is hard for parents to transition between, I'm the one who should know whatever, most things.
Well, and it's like your pride
or
wants
your pride
to feel like, I know better.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm sure it's as hard as a parent where you're, like, the one who raises them and teaches your kids how to do all these things and manners. And then all of a sudden, like,
there's these amazing humans that have
switches,
a different skill set than you, and maybe have read different books and different experience and different whatever. Yeah, it was just fun. I'm like, man, that was so much fun. That felt like just an engaging, you know, I don't know, 2 or 3 hour engaging conversation. I was sad to leave. I'm like, darn it, I have to drive home, but that was so fun.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with, too, like, your attitude about learning in life, and
just being a lifelong learner,
and also, like, knowing that,
it could be from your kids.
It can be from your kids.
Yeah.
And if you really respect them, like, you want to hear what they say. And you want to hear their opinions.
I mean, sometimes when I hear Taylor just talk about what he does and his practice, I'm like,
he's so smart.
I forget that I'm a doctor too. Like, he sounds so smart.
Yeah.
And he is. And he's just so, like he and Mary Kate, the way they live their lives and the way, it's just so inspiring. And it makes it so fun. But I think it does require, I don't know, a willingness to transition to that instead of always thinking, well, I'm the parent. I know more. I know best.
Yeah.
And
you're not doing it from a place, like, you're not trying to be your kids' friends from a place of, like, filling a need that you have.
No.
And, like...
And you're right. You can tell the difference in the energy you bring when that's what you're trying to do.
I think boundaries will... Because everyone's different and everyone has different boundaries. Like, I'm a very open person, and, like, our relationship is probably... We talk about more than maybe, like... I don't know. So everyone's going to be different. I don't think you should have an expectation of what it's going to look like.
Right.
But if you are doing the right work and have the right intentions, the boundaries will set themselves.
Yes.
Or you'll be able to have conversations about that.
Yeah.
And your kids will know that it's from a really genuine place. If not in the moment, then, like, I really do have confidence that at some point they'll look back and be like, oh, I see why she asked those questions. I see why she did that.
Yeah.
And I think it's worth it.
Yeah. And I see Dad doing the same thing, when he's talking to Marcus or Mal or, Tim, Svanny's husband or whatever. Like, I see him doing the same thing. I think it's really sweet.
Yeah.
It's a fun season of life. I'm so grateful for all of you. It's so fun. When we were in Park City together, it was just so lovely. We had so much fun. I think of the birthday party a few weeks ago. Like, you guys are just so fun.
Yeah.
Like, literally my favorite people on earth to hang out with. So.
I know. It's so fun. I love it.
Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that peek into our thoughts about cultivating real, meaningful, deep friendships as your kids grow and transition into adulthood.
Yeah, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. Like, if you're on YouTube, comment your thoughts. And, if you have more questions about any topics we talk about this topic, if you want to hear something new, always feel free to let us know. Yeah. DM us on Instagram, House of Joy Podcast.
I mean, and if you want to book either of us, both of us, for the entertainment, we could come sing Two Black Cadillacs.
No one's asked us yet, and that's kind of on them, but it's always open.
We're always willing.
Yes.
All right. Well, we love you so much. Thank you so much for listening to House of Joy, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.